Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special episode of Hotline League, where Mark and I are fielding your questions and about all sorts of different things. It's basically like a retrospective of the season. You know, all the things that we've always wanted to say but couldn't because we were too busy talking about Cloud9 or Evil Geniuses or NRG. Plus, there was a lot of stuff that came out, including the press conference that I posted last week that I think got a lot of conversation with the teams and also with Riot. And then today I posted a pretty long, it was I guess 40 minutes or so interview with the LCS leadership as it stands. I mean, they're missing their commissioner but have committed to hiring one. And so I think there's a lot of stuff to get out of that. Holy shit. So GM Online is gifting 20 subs on the channel. Thank you very much. One of them went to Brian Kibler, which I think is hilarious. Anyway, I'll shout that out later on. But for now, I want to shout out Alienware for sponsoring this episode. Mark Zimmerman, how you been? What's going on? You're a little whispery today. Do you want to explain why?
I am quieter than usual. So as you all know, Ashley is nocturnal to be a emergency overnight registered veterinary technician. She also got jury duty this week, and turns out she didn't just get assigned jury duty. She had to go in and spend all day there. And for a nocturnal person, those are literally her sleeping hours. So she's been up for like 36 hours and just went to bed like 2 hours ago. And so I need to be a little quieter so she can actually sleep. I have no idea how she's going to handle this if it goes on and she ends up being assigned to this case. Because, that's going to be bad. So... yeah, well, we'll see. I'll have an update at some point, I guess, if she just gets absolutely turbo fucked by the government.
And I do want to say, if at any point in time, Twitch chat, please let us know if the audio gets too quiet or something like that, because I have made some adjustments to accommodate Mark's situation, but I'm going to be relying on Twitch chat to let me know how the audio balance is between me and him and callers and all that stuff, as always. So we don't have an audio engineer. So let's get into what we've been up to this past week before we get into calls. But by the way, Twitch chat, feel free to start putting your calls on the Pleb and Subtopics channel because, and again, this is a bit of an open lines thing, but we're going to be really looking to reflect, like if you were somebody who called in week 1 of spring and said that, I don't know, CLG was going to sell to NRG and NRG was going to win and blah, 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 this is an episode to call in on, or this is the crazy predictions, this is whatever. We're going to be talking about Worlds too much in this episode because boy do we have a long time to get to that. Anyway, Mark, what you been up to?
I got to Act 3 at Baldur's Gate. I am waiting for a patch. They put out one big patch, but I'm waiting for one more probably, and I'm playing Armored Core 6 in the meantime, and it's awesome. I really like it.
So why are you waiting for the patch?
So Act 3 in Baldur's Gate doesn't quite have the same level of polish as Act 1 and Act 2. And as I was just telling you, I'm a big completionist and I want to see every single thing. And I heard that especially if you're like doing things in weird sequences, you might have more bugs than if you just like mainline through it and kind of just like do whatever path you find. And given that I'm going to be going all over the city, I'm just like, you know what, I'll give it a patch or two. And see if it gets any better. I'm not going to wait forever. Given that Armored Core 6 just came out, it's like perfect. I'll just play this until whatever the second patch is. But yeah, that's what I'm up to. I have a big fucking mech. There's some shotguns called the Zimmerman. These shotguns are busted. It's perfect. So I'm just using my own namesake.
That's actually very cool. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
That's pretty sick.
And yes, I am excited for Starfield in chat. That'll be my next big game.
Yeah, there's
Starfield.
so much stuff dropping in the gaming world right now. So many games.
I know, because then there's Cyberpunk's patch or expansion or whatever. I'm going to get that. I never played the original Cyberpunk because it was just shit on release, and hopefully it's like workable enough now. I heard it is, so I'll play that expansion. I mean, I think this is probably the best year for video games ever. I would go so far as to say.
Yeah, I wonder if it's, well, the last one was, I think, either 1993 or 1994. There's one of those that everybody points to as being like this amazing year where like all of these games that everyone still remembers all happened to just come out that year. I think it was 94.
Yeah, I mean, like I didn't play Tears of the Kingdom. I hear that's insane. Diablo 4, I personally didn't like it. It was still a massive game. I don't know. It's like it's hard to think of a bigger year than this.
Yeah. Yep. Well, did you watch anything?
Nothing worth noting, I don't think.
Okay. Well, I spent the weekend in Palm Springs because months and months ago, my friends and I were trying to figure out when we had time to go to do something. And I was like, the weekend after LCS Finals. I'll definitely be free then, because what's going to happen the weekend after LCS Finals? Well, it turns out I could have been at Champions watching the opening of all that and really enjoying it. And instead I watched it from Palm Springs, which was not a terrible situation, but my friends and I went out there. I brought my Alienware and both my Alienware desktop, the Aurora, and also the X18, which my friends were able to game on. And so we just played games the whole weekend. Played a lot of Baldur's Gate. I started it. I restarted it because I was been playing with a friend, but we're playing solo campaigns for the time being, and really enjoying that. I'm probably about 10 hours in or so. So that has been a delight. But I just want to shout out EG Valorant. I really like their story. I'm trying to do something with Boostio, not to be confused with Boostio. Boostio, who's a player on that team who folks might remember called in like a month ago. Yeah,
so we got to take about it too.
If you don't follow Val, I just want to heads up. If you remember the player that called in, he just won world championships. Essentially, that's their worlds, and that was this past weekend. So, Evil Genius's player, and I'm going to try to do some content with him at some point in this time in the next week. But if not, we might get him on to take a couple calls or something, or call in. I heard from EG that he'd be down to call in again, not in this episode, but maybe in a future episode. So we'll figure it out. But really, really fun series, and did actually get me a lot more interested in Val, as well as I did the media day for it. Unfortunately, Riot didn't have like a good way to record audio for it, so it's up for members, but on the YouTube channel, but I didn't post it widely because it's a little scuffed. But some interesting stuff in there that I think, like, they really hyped up co-streaming. I feel like Riot is like all in on co-streaming. We obviously heard that at the press conference that got published last week, and several other things as well. But some interesting things where they talk a lot about how they learned from from League and made these changes in Val and all that stuff. So yeah, exciting to follow and dip my toes into Val for a week before going on this vacation.
You mean for the rest of your career?
Yes, for the rest of my career. I mean, I am going. I don't know. I'm gonna. You know what? Like, a lot of this content with Boostio is going to be a pilot, I guess, to see if I'm going to do some Val content next year, because I do feel like. Well, we'll talk about the press conference and my interview with Riot, but it didn't make me feel like I shouldn't be diversifying from the League stuff. So yeah, we'll get to that. LS in the chat says sub to Travis Gafford with Twitch Prime. Thank you, LS, for showing up.
I don't think it's real LS, actually. I think he has a bot that goes around and interacts with other influencers on Twitter and on Twitch. If this is the real LS, say, I hate Magic the Gathering.
He would never say that.
Exactly. So that's how you know it's the real him.
LS is super into, like, I guess we talked about it on the last episode, the croissant clip or whatever. So
I love.
He says I love Morales.
Same thing.
All right. Well, since we are going to do some open lines tonight, Mark, do you want to explain how the show works, or do you think we should just not do it for this episode?
We don't have that many people. Maybe we skip. There's some new people. All right, let's just do it. Fuck it. If you've never seen the show before, it's a live call-in show. I'm spamming the Twitch chat with Discord link. Go ahead and join up there. Once you get there, go ahead and put whatever it is that you want to talk about this year retrospectively into the pleb calls, or the pleb topics text channel. Put your take there. Join the pleb calls so I can pull you from there into the waiting room. If I like the take that I see that you've posted, you'll hang out there until it's your turn to come on air. We'll do a quick mic check, and then when it's your time, we'll get you on.
Very true. And if you are a sub, first off, thank you for being a sub. I saw some folks gifting subs. I see people sending primes now that LS told people to. So very generous of LS to encourage that. But we do have a subtopics channel on Discord for people who are subs that want to drop their topics in there. It moves a little slower. I mean, it'll be a slower night regardless, but I think that's kind of a swell little thing that you can do. And it's always nice to see that channel as active as the Pleb Topics channel is sometimes. So anyway, Mark, I guess we don't have anything else to really talk about. Oh, you know what? We'll preview some of the stuff. So if you didn't go look at my interview with the Riot leaders, you can. It's on my YouTube channel. It's not doing too hot from a viewership perspective, I think mostly because people are maybe a little skeptical at this point in time of how these interviews tend to go. But I do think that the people that are watching it are, even if they're not sharing a ton, it's giving you some pretty interesting insight into where Riot's head is at, especially around schedule for next year, which maybe doesn't sound like it's going to be changing, or if it does change, will probably not change to the weekends. And some other stuff. They talk a lot about co-streaming in the press conference. They talk a lot about I talk about Immortals with them in that interview, and they kind of are uncomfortable during that part. So there's a lot going on there. Let's see what else has popped up in the past week. Any big topics? Twitch chat. Shout it out if there's anything that you've seen that we want to talk about. Otherwise, I think it's going to be kind of, as I said at the beginning, really just a reflection of, hey, what was the LCS in 2023? How do we think it went? What was good? What was rough? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, I do want to address, there was this report, or I think Dexerto quoted Monty about this franchise fee thing. I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody involved, but I will say that this was talked about earlier in the year, where Needham referenced it in his post, I think, and I feel like there was some public conversation. Maybe I'm crazy, but I thought there was some public conversation because this basically happened at the beginning of the year. I did tweet that out, and I saw some team owners coming in and liking that tweet, so that kind of, I'm not saying they're giving the thumbs up on it, but it kind of felt like it to my perspective. So, I mean, we can definitely talk about it if folks want, but I don't think it is. I think people might have had the wrong impression from that. My understanding is Riot basically went to the teams and said, hey, we're still owed I think it was like a year's worth of payments or something. They were on the final couple of payments, or maybe the final one payment from my understanding. And Riot was like, hey, you can defer this for, I think it's a year or two from my understanding, but I think there's some sort of additional interest that they have to pay on it. Like, I don't know, maybe 5% or something like along those lines. So it's not completely free to do. But yeah, that's basically what's going on there. And I believe that was basically in light of the economic situation, especially at the beginning of this year, where people thought we were going into like a really heavy recession. Obviously things are not great for teams, but I think that things are maybe, the economy is maybe not in the nosedive that everyone thought it was going to be. So that's kind of what happened there from my perspective. Trying to see if anybody in Twitch chat says there's anything else that we are forgetting. Mark, if we're not pulled into the waiting room, can we leave the Discord? Well, Mark sometimes pulls additional folks into like later on. So it's, if you want to leave and you're like, you know, I think the chances are less likely that if you don't get pulled in the waiting room that you're going to get pulled. But I don't know, Mark, if you want to speak on that.
No, I think, one, it's not school. You can do whatever you want. I'm not going to get mad at you unless you're in the waiting room and you just leave. But even then, like, people do that sometimes. And they're like, oh, I have to go. Sorry. So no big deal. But yeah, I do pull sometimes. If you're not in the first batch of people I pull, I only pull usually a couple more. But, you can keep trying.
LS would like us to talk about Wilds of Eldraine pre-release this week. I would love to talk about that. Mark Zimmerman, I think on behalf of the non-Magic fans in the chat, is
I will alt F4 the broadcast. I will go play Armored Core if we're going to talk about our hobbies.
Wilpley says, did you mention the Toast event we announced? I don't think we had a chance to talk about that last time. Is there a link or something, Wilpley, you can share in the chat so that we can review it? Because I know that got announced on broadcast. Mark sounds like he's half asleep because his fiance is asleep in the house. You can go back and look at the beginning of the stream to understand why. The NA Legends Invitational, hosted by Disguised Toast. This is on September 16th and 17th. and they are hosting a first of its kind North American League of Legends esports event for fans. They are going to have 4 teams competing for a $10,000 prize pool under the leadership of NA LOL legends and captains Aphromu, Scar, Sneaky, and Yasuo. So are these are those 4 players competing on these teams as the captains, or are they?
Yes.
Okay, so
They're
they
playing.
are actually playing. Yeah. So folks can check this out. It's going to have 3 streamers, 1 LCS player, and 1 NACL player. And I think this event is disgusting because Riot is breaking their own rules by allowing an LCS player to compete in something that is not the LCS. I can't believe they'd allow something like this to occur. I think what they did to Bjergsen last year in Vegas was true and real and just, and now they're going back on that.
Wait, my question though is, Travis,
Yeah.
are any of the players competing in this also going to Worlds?
I think probably not.
So maybe it's because it's not in season technically for some of them. The rest of them are all lost.
Yeah, my understanding is you can't compete in, like, I mean, I'm being sardonic here. Like, I know.
Like,
It's fine, but I do think the rule originally prevented them from. This is definitely a bending of the rules, and in a good way.
The
I think.
rules have been bent before as well. I think
Yeah.
a number of Worlds teams in 2017 competed in some Chinese promo match.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the Billy clutch thing.
Yeah.
You just get the right person, the right money in. Right. We'll bend those rules for you. Okay.
You know what? You want to hear my hot take?
Yeah.
You should bend rules when it's the right time to do it.
I mean, I agree.
If you
I don't think you bend
rules
rules around competitive integrity, but I do think you bend rules around something like this.
Yes, I think that rules should mostly be followed, but it is important to understand when something is against the spirit of the rule and like why you have that rule. It's there to stop players from taking money to go do show matches during the LCS season. It's not there to fuck the fans over. So if it's not going to fuck the fans and it's not going to fuck your season, just bend the rule.
I think a lot of people are pointing out that the Asian Games is happening, and I like the idea that this is our Asian Games. All right. The East gets the Asian Games. The West gets the NA Legends Invitational hosted by Disguised Toast. And I'll leave it up to you to decide which one of these is more prestigious. I know which one I'll be watching. All right.
One of them isn't going to incite... well, I shouldn't say what's going to incite.
Mark, why don't you go grab the next caller, or the first caller? Let's not use the word incite on the show.
It's going to incite...
We're talking about,
let's throw some other buzzwords in there.
A lot of joy from the people who want to watch it. All right. Mark is off to grab the first caller, but we've been getting a bunch of subs on this episode so far. So thank you to Yoser for a year, Poggy Woggies, the Dixie Cup, Zypher634, Seaman Demon, the GM Online, who must have maybe changed their name, or they I haven't seen them for a bit because they dropped 20 subs on the channel, and I think had done so previously. So thank you, GM Online. If you're here, please shout out who you are. Our first caller of the night is here, and let us know what your name is and where you're calling from.
My name is Talocy, and I'm from Dubuque, Iowa.
Dubuque, Iowa. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Yeah, so my topic was, with EG becoming the 2023 champions in VALORANT, it's become very apparent that North America League of Legends needs to change its team practice in order to become more competitive internationally.
All right. So, as we talked about at the start of the show, a North American team, Evil Geniuses, won the equivalent of VALORANT World Championships 2 days ago. And that's what we're discussing here. Boostio, a player of that team, previously called into Hotline League and had sort of shamed North American League of Legends players, saying that they don't work as hard as the Val players. So, yeah, why don't you go ahead and elaborate on your take here?
Yeah, so, I mean, about a month ago, like you said, Boostio came on Hotline League and pretty much stated that, like, the LoL practice is about 5 hours a day, which is roughly about 25 to 30 hours a week. And he was saying stuff like in high school he was playing 7 to 8 hours, and that's in-game time. Not to mention right now, he was saying over 7 months straight he was playing 9 hours of dedicated team practice pretty much every day of the week except for having one day off, I think. So I mean, the fact that Busio put his money where his mouth is, and now he's the world champion of the esport that he's competing in, it kind of shows that, you know, any League of Legends pros need to buckle up and put some work in if they don't want this region to be the joke that everyone makes us out to be.
Yeah, I still need to investigate what. I'm confused because I did think that League players, and I was confused when he had this take too, were practicing more than 5 hours. I thought most of these guys said like 8 or 10.
He said organized team hours. They play 12 to 5, and then that's when I told him that a lot of the teams switched to 12 to 3 and 4 to 7 or whatever, and that but players didn't like that. It was a big conversation, but he's not wrong that for the last couple of years, League pros in NA and EU have won 12 to 5, and sometimes a night block, which is more like if it was 7 to 10 or something.
Yeah,
but that's like during crunch time. It's not like a constant thing.
Yeah. So, what do you think? How do you think they should change it? Is it just more? Is it just practice more? Is that basically where you're at, caller?
I think it's more based off of creating a culture between all the teams. Like, all the teams need to come together and be able to decide, like, hey, if we want to compete, we have to set up more time for team-to-team team practice, because it's obviously not working the hours that we're putting in now. And from my understanding, at least from previous calls and watching the shows, is that kind of teams communicate, and if most teams go with a certain schedule, then everyone else is just going to conform to that so that everyone can practice against a certain team. So it's one of those, I think the teams need to come together and kind of be like, hey, we suck when it comes to internationally, and we want to get better. And it's shown in other esports that if you put more hours in, results get better. So, I mean, that's just my general Band-Aid fix for now.
So I see a couple of people in the chat. For instance, Wilpa Plays, who says, ugh, why are we talking about Valorant? We're not fucking talking about Valorant. We're talking about League of Legends and how League of Legends pros are lazy in comparison to Valorant, at least based off of what the recent world champion of Valorant said, who like is on one of these teams that also has a League of Legends team and says he talks to the league players.
He used to extensively follow the like LCS scene too. He's not just like some random Valorant player. He is like a hardcore esports fan and like knows not everything about the NA scene anymore since he's gone pro in a different game. He did Overwatch and stuff, but like knows the scene decently well.
It's been 12 to 13 years of North America sucking. And then in the very beginning of Valorant, North America wins something, and we've got people who are like, why do we even need to think about these guys? It's because
should we emulate what they did? No.
Okay. So a couple things here. I remain a little skeptical that North American players are not working as hard as, like, I don't think that they are only working 5 hours a day. So I want to put that out there, because what happens is sometimes we have these conversations and then it gets quoted on Reddit, and then there's a conversation, and then suddenly people are like, League pros are only working about 4.5 hours a day, and then they're enjoying the LA celebrity lifestyle the rest of their time. So I want to be clear that I think that they are working more than 5 hours a day. But I do think that, what was it, Mark? How many years ago did we switch over to the way, like, there was an LEC scrim model?
2020 or 2019, I can't remember. One of those two.
Basically, the LCS teams looked at the LEC and said, oh, the LEC is scrimming and this like 1 5-game block, because I think previously we were doing 2 3-game blocks. Yeah,
and that's what Korea did. The NA copied Korea in 2013, 14, 15, and it was standard. I'd say even Europe did that. I don't know exactly when Europe changed, but it would have been like 2017, 2018, or maybe even 2018, 19. But they changed at some point with the rise of G2 is when I know it kind of spread around.
Yeah, well, I think it would be interesting to have a conversation with a coach or a player. And so maybe we'll book one in the future on this episode. There were a couple who said they'd like to have come on today, but they were sick or busy or something. And have this conversation with them, because I don't think that it is unreasonable to ask the question of like, hey, is this really the most efficient way to scrim and to prepare? I don't know.
Yeah, I think I really like that idea of because it's very easy for us to sit here and be like, yeah, they should work harder, duh, when we don't have to invest anything, and we're not actually there in the day to day. Because to that point about the other things that they do, they have meetings to prepare. They have like their before and after meetings, and they have solo queue. And I think there's a question of how much is solo queue valuable versus scrims to be able to try things, because how many agents are there in Valorant? Like 30 maybe. What is it? If even that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. But either fucking way, I mean, there's 160 in league. And obviously you're going to see a lot more variation. And, if you want to grind out variation, it's actually easier to do in solo queue in a less structured environment, in some sense. So I think there is a legitimate conversation to have about the differences between the games and what's the best practice for each. Whereas like in Valorant, you have like really organized plays that you want to practice. Whereas in League, there's really not that many organized, repeatable plays with like a set of champions, because there's a much wider range of champions you're going to see, and game states snowball way harder. Whereas in Valorant, every round resets to the basic thing. Your money might be different, but assuming you have that baseline money, you can start every round the exact same way. That's impossible. So there's a lot more importance on general knowledge in League of Legends rather than specific knowledge in Valorant. And these are really interesting conversations to have. And I just don't think that, I can speculate, but I feel like having actual coaches would be really fun. If we had Busio on with like an LCS coach or something,
yeah,
that'd be fuego.
I mean that, or I saw somebody in chat mention Zix, who, for those that
has done both,
don't remember, Zix is a head coach that won 2 LCS championships and had previously played or worked with CLG, TSM, and 100T, and then he was one of the coaches on this EG team that just won. So I think he'd be super fun. I'm messaging him right now. He says he's in an Uber. Otherwise, I'd be trying to get him on the show. There we go. All right. I sent him a message. Anyway, so caller, did you had sound like you had something you wanted to say?
No, yeah, I feel like you brought up a good point, because I feel like saying NA pros that play League of Legends are lazy is completely unfair. This topic more or less generates the fact of like, how are we using that training time to the most efficient manner? And like that's where I think it needs to be looked at more, because when you look at the interviews that everyone made after they won the grand finals, I'm talking about EG obviously right now. The main thing that I got hooked on pretty much every single person's comment is the amount of trust that they had. It was like, no matter what, you're trusting the other person, and if they make a play or if they call something out, you just go with it. And I feel like watching League of Legends, a lot of the time you see people that don't commit or don't have enough of a team identity, and maybe that comes with a lack of trust of not playing enough with each other. So that's just where my call originated at.
Yeah, I don't think that it's ever going to be a situation where they're not playing enough with each other. I do think it is more of just like a skill gap situation. Like, I can't imagine that going from playing 6 hours a day with each other to 8 hours a day with each other, suddenly you're like, it all suddenly clicked. It couldn't click for 8 months, but once we did that, it suddenly everything changed.
Yeah, I think like there's 2 kinds of improvements. There's that click, like I've had that click in different skills, where you're like, oh, I'm not getting it, so then you get it. But a lot of the time it's also just like staying in form, and like you just incrementally improve, and that's where the extra hours add up, because over the course of a season, if you play 1 extra hour a day and you practice for 200 days, it's 200 hours extra that you practice, and so to Busio's point as well, he also said that they did solo queue as well, and they would play actually more like 13 to 16 hours. I think he was saying that he and his team was doing, on top of the more like 8-ish team hours. So it is fair to say that he was also just saying they didn't play enough. And it's also fair to say that the East plays more than the West in League of Legends as well. So I do think, there maybe is some truth to it too, but I think it'd be really fun to get him on to discuss it again or something.
Yeah.
With someone else.
Yep. All right. Thank you so much, caller, for the ring. What do you want to shout out before we go on to the next caller?
I will shout out Alienware. The only reason I have my Alienware laptop is because I've watched this show for 3 years. So shout out to Alienware and Travis.
Thank you
for
very much.
this awesome show.
I really appreciate it. Sorry, it's really nice to hear. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, have a good one. All right. Mark, you want to grab the next caller?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you to Xander Gage, Mr. Dr. Enchilada, Cherry Lace. Cherry Lace hit 60 months, 5 years. Thank you so much. Might be slightly ahead at 62 months. America Vespucci, God Mode. Have you seen my dad? 2714. Thank you for the prime. Nelly B, Dragon Severed Head, Retro Paint, and Swede Be Good gifted 5 subs. We'll shout out the rest in a second because we've got alexbad here. Alexbad, where are you calling from? You're muted.
I'm in Chicago.
Chicago. Okay, what do you want to talk about on the show?
I want to talk about Riot's PR response in the interview today.
All right. So, yeah, this is the interview we released earlier today. What's your take?
So the take was Riot has to take their PR much more seriously and treat this year like an emergency to respond to. That interview made it seem like they don't think like this is a big deal somehow, and their plans like hoping Asian audiences will tune into the LCS if they message it right don't seem realistic to me. It seems like they need to commit to specific differences, but really overall it just seems like they need to talk to fans differently.
Yeah, I agree. For the most part, let me hear if there's anything in particular that you heard in the interview or anything in particular that you want to call out, especially for those that didn't get a chance to listen to it yet.
Yeah, so there's a couple of small things to pull out that I thought were especially crazy, like their plans to try to get LCS fans to watch CB LOL on the same day, and but really it was that hoping that the untapped Asian market for the LCS is like the secret to saving the league, because it seems like it just doesn't seem like it's grounded in reality, and this seems at this point like a really serious management problem. I think like they kept dodging a bunch of the questions that were, even some of them seemed like softballs to give like really good answers to. The biggest thing is the weekends though. And I know that's what everybody's going to say, and it's going to be the whole topic for the entire off season, but it just seems like right now, if I were those guys, my move would be to be decisive and to try to get the fans back on my side and saying, well, I don't know, we've looked at the data and it's going to be really hard to read because we did 3-day weeks because of the mean players or whatever. Like they said that in both interviews, and that's just a totally insane response given the tenor of conversations right now.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that there's the LCS feels like it's on fire from a viewership perspective, especially. And I do agree with the sentiment that the broadcast has improved, but I do think that overall the league is in a really tough place. And I think, look, I want to say I appreciate Riot sitting down and having these conversations with me, because I want to recognize that like they could just say no and just never talk with me and just do their press conference and refuse to answer questions that they don't want to, or they could just not call on me in the press conference. They could just not talk about a lot of this stuff. And so I do appreciate them doing this in the first place, because I think we all need to remember there was a time where they didn't do very much of this. That being said, I didn't walk away from doing that interview feeling particularly confident about the league. And I like that you used the word decisive, because I feel like that would be very helpful in terms of instilling confidence in the audience, right? Hey, everyone, we know that this year has been really rough. And they to point out, they did say that at the start of the press conference. They said that it's not like things are not where they want it to be, and they said in the interview as well. So it's not like they're head in the sanding. But it is really tough whenever you say, okay, well, what about this? And the answer is like, well, we haven't seen the data yet. We're looking at it, like that. I don't think it takes a lot of data to recognize that the league did not flourish underneath this schedule, and that the idea that it did is not great, or is not true. And right. I worry that they get to hide behind two things, right? Which is one, well, we wanted to do it at 12, and instead we had to do it at 2. And Travis and the community like bullied us into 2. I worry that next year they're going to change it to 12, and I don't know what I do at that point in time, because I don't think that 12 is the answer. Like, I understand, and Mark and I have talked about this even on this show, where it's like maybe 12 is something that gets you more viewership. I don't think it's getting you North America viewership, and this is the North American League. So I continue to think that sacrificing North American viewership for a higher overall number is not the move for this league. Like, we were just in New Jersey. Those seats were the arena was not filled the way it used to be, and so I really do not feel like I was alarmed at how the scheduling stuff was not addressed and not talked about. And I would think that we're fucking done with the season, guys. Like, the data's there. I don't know why you need much longer to look at it. We know the data from spring. We know the data from summer. Like, the finals were not going to change it remarkably. And I think the other thing they can hide behind, and I worry they will, is the player walkout, because they get to say, oh, no, that wasn't us. That was the players. And summer viewership was so bad because we had this rough start. We missed the first 2 weeks, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think that viewership would have been up year over year if that had not happened. And I really don't think that the viewership was down as much as it was, mostly because of that. So I think, yeah, there's not a lot of confidence coming out of it. And I do appreciate them taking the time to do the interview, but they're just not saying the stuff in those interviews that they need to say in order to win back confidence from the audience. And somebody in the Twitch chat said the term "out of touch," and like, it kind of does feel that way sometimes, because I know what the audience wants to hear. The audience wants to hear, "Hey guys, we fucked up on the schedule. We had this experiment. We had this data we looked at. We made this decision based off of it. Clearly, that was not the play. So we're looking at how we can balance both the needs of LEC and Valorant North America with the LCS to make sure that all these leagues are succeeding. We will be looking at a schedule change. We can't comment further on what that will look like, but we're going to make changes." And you say that in about a number of different things. Hey, we're having tough conversations with Immortals. We understand that they've hit the number right now that allows them to be removed from the league. And we really like what they're doing with us and Val. We think they've been a great partner there. We're trying to figure out how we can get into a good place with them on the league side, and we're having those conversations. Like, you can have answers that do not give an immediate commitment without sort of dodging a lot of it. And I feel like that was what happened in a lot of those conversations. So again, I appreciate the fact that they did this interview, and I don't want to just create a situation where everybody feels like they can go out and like shit on them. But I do think fans are reasonable in feeling disappointed, and it feels like that's a big sentiment from those people that watch that interview.
I've done the Steve Rogers. You can no longer recognize me, right?
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah, I can probably hang on. I could probably while you start talking, let me see if I can make some adjustments so that anybody tuning in can't see. Yeah. All right, go ahead,
Yeah.
Mark.
Yeah. A little bump up the sharpness and the contrast or whatever you're doing.
Yes.
I'm a shadowed figure.
Yeah.
So I have two thoughts, I guess, without getting like too much into it, because obviously I can't like give my full 2 cents. But I do think I appreciate what you said about how Riot is trying to like step up and give these kind of conversations to fans, because sometimes in the past you get literally nothing. That said, given the response to the video, you can see that clearly it's still pretty negative and didn't satisfy the fans or give them anything. seemingly positive. Like I don't think I saw very many positive comments in there at all. So it's a question of how valuable it is, like, to take this PR approach if it's not going to yield positive sentiment around the product or hope or any of these things that you're talking about. And I do think it's a question of like, it's not to abandon it, but to like really think hard about how we communicate with our fans, because this didn't work clearly. Though I think doing something is like, you have to do something. If the league is trending down in viewership and stuff like that, of course your fans are going to want to hear from you. But if when you open your mouth they don't like what they hear, then like you need to figure out how to appease your fans and what they want and give them what they want. The other thing I'll say is they did talk a lot about like positive broadcast sentiment. That is strictly around some of the content, not all of it. It is being somewhat selective, as well as the fact that the sentiment around the overall product is not positive. And I think that's something that they didn't differentiate in that video. And, for good reason, because they're trying to say like the positives. But if you look at the overall sentiment of the entire product, it is not positive. Whether that's the changes, whether that's the ecosystem with tier 2 booming, whether that's how teams approach the LCS, whether that's Riot's own comms, the overall state of esports, like there's a number of things that are negative sentiment, and those just go totally unacknowledged in a sense. And again, I don't blame them for not bringing it up here, but it is, if you are behind the scenes, sentiment that you need to win back in the LCS's favor, because you can make a great product, to their point, that when people watch it, they like. And they talked a lot about marketing, but it's not marketing. It's convincing people that LCS is worth their time. And you can't do that just by, when they finally click in, they kind of like what they see. That's a hard battle to win. You really need to improve the overall perception of the product. And I think that's a much bigger task that things like this PR and future PR needs to do a better job of.
I mean, I think... Go ahead, caller.
Well, it just seems like that starts with this, right? This is your best opportunity.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
Say like, everybody is mad that we did all these communications really poorly. Like Travis, for everybody who hasn't seen the interview, one of the best pieces of it is Travis says like, hey, everybody was really upset about how the season started this year. And a lot of that comes with, you guys said you were committed to the future of the LCS, and then you did this, like, frankly, like, huge management disaster of like threatening to cancel the league if everybody didn't do what you wanted.
Typically, that's heavy paraphrasing. I did not say huge management disaster in the question.
Sure.
Go ahead, Alex.
That's not your quote, but like the theme of the question was, you said like you guys committed that you weren't going to do that, like you're deep into the LCS, and a lot of people like really take issue with that. They think that like, if you look at the questions every week here on the Pleb Topics chat, like a lot of people are like, I can't tell the difference between like incompetence and like them trying to accurately kill the LCS. So like they've got a serious problem, and the best way to get in front of all of that as a management team, if you've ever had a serious problem and been a manager, is to say like, listen, here's what's happening and here's what's not happening. And I feel like that's just like such a huge opportunity they're squandering here. Like maybe they don't go back to weekends. I hope they do, but maybe they can't because of other things. Then say that. Don't they've done in 2 interviews now said that like they're setting up this narrative to be, because it was 3 days, it's hard to read the data and everything. I guarantee you they are going to say that. That's going to be the like crazy lol esports blog post that comes out in a couple of months that's about how they're going to show this at like 7 a.m. on Tuesdays or whatever, because the data says that that's when people love to stream stuff. Like they're just really missing a big opportunity to just be like clear about what is happening, even if it's not exactly what the audience would really want. Because like if they think that the real problem is that the product is pretty good but the messaging is poor, they're the messengers.
Yeah, I think all of that is very fair. I think, combining kind of what you were just saying and what Mark was saying right before that is like, they do talk a lot about how sentiment is increasing. I do agree sentiment is increasing around a lot of the LCS. I don't think sentiment is increasing around LCS vision and or leadership, right? Like I don't think the community is getting more confident in the future of the LCS or more confident in the decisions that are being made around it or the vision that Riot has. In fact, I think they're getting less confident. And so more than anything, like, okay, cool, you made changes to the broadcast that people liked, but are you making changes that are making people feel confident that like you're committed to this league? So I think I think that is really harkens back to your original take, right? Which is they need to really figure out how to do this. I just want to say, I saw this sentiment a lot in some of the comments on the YouTube video, which is like, these guys kind of got thrown to the wolves. You know, like Raul and Carlos had not done interviews and conversations before this. This was their first time out there. It is part of the reason why I was very clear beforehand with Riot, like, hey guys, like, I'm going to have to be more direct and try to hold a little bit more accountability, because there were a lot of commitments made by Nas and John at the end of last year, at the beginning of this year, throughout this year, that they are not willing to take this interview for and to answer for. And these guys are going to have to field it, which is tough because they work for those folks. You know, it's like not a situation where suddenly big bosses are stepping in and being held accountable for decisions made below them. It's like these guys are getting held accountable for decisions made above them. That's not fun. And I tried to address that at the very beginning, especially to take a little bit of the heat off these guys. I did run into Needham at the Valorant. We didn't even talk about this, Mark. I ran into Needham at the Valorant Media Day. He's coming down the stairs at the studio, and I was like, "Why are you dodging?" And he was like, "Oh, I thought for sure you were going to try to burst into the Valorant question line and during the press conference and ask me questions." I was like, "No, I wouldn't do that during Val." But he's like, "I'm not dodging. I just want to wait until we have something good to talk about." I'm like, "Okay, it's fine, whatever." But and so like to be clear, he has like there are conversations about me doing an interview with them around the start of Worlds or during Worlds. So it's not a situation where I think they are going to be gone forever and now Carlos and Raul have to tank all this stuff. I think their sentiment was a little bit like, hey, we want to talk about global stuff more and let these guys talk more about the LCS stuff because they're currently running the LCS stuff and it's the LCS finals and blah, blah, blah. I get that. But I still disagree with that decision because I do feel like, hey, you guys had made public commitments to have these conversations with me on certain timelines. We've missed those timelines, and now I have to talk to these folks who are going to have to answer for a lot of the stuff that, like, I personally feel like Nas and John should be in a position to talk about. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of just disappointing all around. And as a quick aside, I know I've talked a lot during this, but as a quick aside, I am planning on doing a video probably this week talking about am I killing the LCS? Because I get a lot of feedback from people who, and I see this in the comments and I hear it from people in the industry too, where it's like, Travis, when you go out there and you just have all this negativity, or you do a show where we do these interviews and then like you come out and you just talk about, you know, losing confidence and all that stuff, that doesn't help the league. And I get it. But there's also a fine line between like, how much do I head in the sand on these things versus how much do I try to say like, hey, here are problems, please solve them, you know? So,
I'll gas you up a little bit.
Wow. For once, after 200 something episodes, guys, it's going to happen.
Well, here's what it is, Travis. You're monumentally influential and you are destroying the LCS. Shut the fuck up.
Oh,
please.
There it is. Okay.
No, I mean, just like some numbers, because like for why I think Travis and I sometimes seem so doomer as people who have been in the industry for like a long time, you know, like from summer 2023 to summer 2022, the average viewers went from 115,000 to 77,000 basically, which is a problem.
I mean, I think I said that in the interview, did I not?
You quoted these numbers, but I just mean, you know, for the Hotline League audience, if they haven't seen it, it's like, yeah, that's really bad, but you can cope with those things that you talked about, you know, whether it's the walkout and whatnot. But I think the thing that I've been drawn to more recently is the peaks. The peak, you know, these are almost always your finals. In fact, they're always your finals. Let me say almost. They are always your finals, are your peaks. And in summer 2022, 370,000. In spring, or in this summer 2023, it's 22,000. You lost 150,000 viewers of your peak. You can't blame scheduling for that. You can't blame, you can blame scheduling, but in a different way. But like, you know, these are, at the end of the day, how many fans did you have at the end of the season that you can convince to show up for your finale? and you couldn't convince that you couldn't convince 150,000 people. You lost them somewhere along the way. That's huge. That's a monumental drop off, and it's scary. And that is where the sentiment thing comes in. That is where the scheduling thing comes in. Because if people couldn't watch consistently as much over the course of the summer, when it comes to time for your big capstone event, they don't care anymore. And they stop showing up. And that's where the scheduling thing matters, potentially. And so, like, that's why I think Travis and I can be Doomer, because we see how bad that is. And we also...
As else as you said 22K, but I think you meant 222K.
Oh, yeah, excuse me, 220,000. Yeah, so we went from 370 to 220 for summer to summer finals 1 year later. That's a pretty big churn. And so, like, I think when you're in these conversations with people publicly who are the ones making decisions that can influence these kinds of numbers, because it's not Travis. Travis did not tank 150,000 people away by being negative. Travis would love to have that kind of power. He doesn't, let's be honest. No one cares what Travis thinks. No one cares what Travis thinks. These numbers are going down because of the people.
Mark giveth, he taketh away.
These numbers are going down from factors beyond Travis or even I necessarily. And so when you have public conversations, you try and talk about this stuff, and it's negative. So of course the conversation is colored negative, but I think I'm always a fan of, just talking about the honesty and like what's actually happening, and not trying to bright side when, the bright siding is just called out, because that's kind of what happened in this interview. It's like they did acknowledge that the numbers weren't great, but they didn't dig into like why or what lessons they learned or like what we would change, and that's where the lack of optimism comes from, I think.
Right. I think that's the thing. Like, in so much as it matters, is like, we wouldn't be negative if nobody cared. Like, there's an interest in the product. I think this year was way better than people were probably expecting it to be. Like, there were a lot of things, if everybody remembers, there was a lot of sort of uncertainty going into this year, and I think the games were awesome, the casting was awesome. Like, this was a really good year of League. Just had fewer people watching it, and I think if I were the management team trying to fix that, that would be the focus, and it just seems like a really strange missed out. I don't know. I know I've said missed opportunity a bunch.
No, that's what it is. I feel like there needs to, like, just rip the Band-Aid off, right? Like, if you're not going to change it from the week, like, there's a lot of trying to have your cake and eat it too. And when they kind of do this thing where, like, we're still looking at the schedule, blah, blah, blah. Like, people, it's just, like, if you're committed to not doing weekends, which it seems like they are, then maybe that's it. Now, I love, you know what it is? I'd love to live in this fantasy world, and maybe this is what I should tell myself, where, like, Carlos and Raul are in these meetings with John and Nas, and they're like, guys, we need the fucking weekends, okay? And they're like, we can't commit to that, blah, blah, blah. Like, we have to figure this out. And they're like, guys, it's the weekends or we walk, and then they get in these interviews, and that's why they're hedging. So maybe there's something there, but, like, I have not heard, and normally I feel like I would, if there was some big movement internally at Riot to try to shift this stuff over, between leadership. And so as much as I'd like to give the benefit of the doubt that there are changes or that there's a fight being made to have this happen, like, I haven't heard about that. So, I don't know. I think it's pretty rough. Pretty rough. Alex, anything else you want to add? I know we could just talk about this for a long time, but we should probably move on.
No, I know we're not long. No, shout out to you guys and everybody who, made this year a pretty good year of the LCS. I hope more people watch it.
Yeah, me too. And we'll catch you next time.
Thanks.
Before we go into a break, I do want to mention, like, while we're on the topic of this, because I think we've talked about this type of thing so often, but I've never really had this conversation. Ego Anello, who is a first-time chatter, says, I think it's much deeper than just scheduling. I didn't watch a single game this split, and it wasn't because of the schedule. I'm curious, Ego, if you would let us know, and legitimate question, I'm not trying to challenge you. Why is it that you didn't watch a single game this split?
While he answers that, yes. I think...
that while they answer.
Right, correct. You don't know. I also want to make it clear that I don't think the scheduling is the end all be all. And that's kind of what I was getting at with, like, the sentiment. If you only limit sentiment to be the content, sure, it went up. But if you include all the other sentiment driving things, such as decisions around losing a lot of your most fan loved talent and changing the weekdays, but then not having good PR around it, regardless of the actual schedule impact. You have the PR around those changes. You had the walkout. You had the just tier 2 scene academy getting removed. You've had just a number of things that will impact sentiment beyond the actual schedule. So I don't want to make it seem like it's it's a pie chart. We always say this: there's a pie chart. Each reason will take up some portion of the wedge. You don't know how big each wedge is exactly, but yeah. Did you end up answering while I filled?
No, ego did not answer, but I just do want to say, like, there's a lot of folks I think who are like, it's just so annoying watching North American teams lose over and over again, or we're not competitive and all that stuff. That's something you can't change. And so I never, like, whenever somebody says they're not going to watch because of that, I'm like, okay, not even in any kind of resentment or anything like that, but it's just, that is not, okay, you lost that viewer. You have to figure out a way to get a different one. I think any kind of argument or any kind of conversation around, well, it's because of the competition. Yeah, you're going to lose the people who only want to watch a region whenever they feel like they can win the world championships. I don't think that you should plan around the idea that you're going to get viewers for that, because as we were just talking about with the LCS, where I said there's only one team that can win, or maybe two if you want, per year. There's only one team, one region that can win worlds per year, and North America is fairly disadvantaged in that way. So, like, somebody doesn't want to watch because they're not going to, because we suck. All right, that's nothing to do there, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's also true that we've always sucked, and so like,
Eganello says, I don't think I have a good answer. I just wasn't interested. Okay, fair enough. I can't do much with that.
It would be fun to invite this person on, do like a therapy session, and like dive into the.
When did you first stop watching the LCS?
What life events traumatized you to not want to watch the LCS?
Yeah. All right. Do we have anything else about the calls or the interviews or anything else, Mark?
No, I intentionally went long with this one because I didn't want to just like keep pulling a bunch of different takes that all just like
kind
circle
of say the same thing.
Yeah,
interview bad.
Interview bad, time bad.
Yeah,
there you go. I think we still have other topics in this vein because there's like the press conference thing, but like I think this was the big one around this.
All right. Well, if that's the case, I'd like to welcome back to the show Mark Zimmerman, joining us now on the show. Welcome back, Mark. Good to have you here. And sorry you had to leave for that anonymous caster. Oh,
it's okay.
Random aside, because of TikTok, I discovered something which I don't know if you would appreciate it, Mark. I kind of feel like you would, called The Real Bros of Simi Valley. Have you ever heard of this?
Vaguely, I think I have actually.
So it was like 4 episodes that were like 10 minutes long on a YouTube channel. Like Cody Ko is in it, who's like a YouTuber, and there's some other people.
Yeah.
And then YouTube Watch Facebook Watch bought the rights and did 2 seasons of it. And I started watching it because I saw clips of it on TikTok, and which is very difficult because YouTube Watch does not have, or Facebook Watch, I keep calling it that, does not have a like TV app or anything like that. And I'm about halfway through the 2nd season, and as somebody who grew up in Southern California, I cannot recommend this show enough. It is amazing. Like it's a riff on The Hills or Real Housewives or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I just know it is so much Southern California, especially like the Inland Empire and stuff. Like it's just, and the seeds and all the drama in it. It's so fucking good. I highly recommend. Go watch Real Bros of Simi Valley. I guess it didn't get renewed. I think the last episode was in 2020. It probably died because of COVID, but a phenomenal show. Anyway,
I'll check it out. Yeah.
All right.
I
guess we can do a break. Let's do a break.
Yeah, I was going to say ad read.
All right. Hello, everyone. It is time to talk about Alienware. We were in the mire of the LCS conversation, but we're climbing out of that, and we're climbing towards the Alienware M18, an amazing computer, which I would highly recommend that you check out. You could do so at alienware.com/Travis. I know I've been talking about this laptop for a while. I've been talking about how much I love it, but it is just fantastic. It's got the NVIDIA 4000 series RTX in it. And this past weekend, I took it out to the desert, out to Palm Springs for a little bit of vacation. And my friends were able to use it and absolutely loved it. They played, I was on my Aurora, but they were traveling from Texas, and so they had to, weren't able to bring a desktop out with them. And I said, don't worry, I got you. I brought the Alienware M18. They played Baldur's Gate on it all weekend long. They had a great time. There were no issues. This thing just ran like a dream. And that's what I love about Alienware products, is just how you can use them to game on the go and have the power of NVIDIA's 4000 series behind you. So if you're looking to pick up an Alienware computer, any computer, especially a laptop, go check out alienware.com/Travis. If you're looking for something with a big, beautiful screen that's going to be fantastic, check out the Alienware M18. It's a lovely machine. So thank you so much to Alienware for sponsoring the show. 4000 series. Lynn Snowbloom says 4000 series. Numi just linked it in the chat. Don't buy it through that link. Buy it through alienware.com/Travis. But you can go look at which NVIDIA 4000s they have. And guess what? They've got the 4060, they've got the 4070, they've got the 4080, and they've got the 4090. Hopefully that answers your question. 4000 series. Thank you so much to Alienware for sponsoring the show. Alienware.com/Travis. All right. Mark is off to grab the next caller. Thank you to... Ooh, we got a bunch of subs. Thank you to... Man, where were we? MTG Perry for 1 year. Chappelle for 34 months. Danny Grimm for 34. Ricky Tiki Talk. Dead Pavilion. Flick Nickum for 40 months. Zaseshi. Bigger Frog. The Hotness 95. Alpha. Dark Alley HT. Soybeans. Pro Star. And then 504 Caesar gifted 5 subs. Thank you all for those subs. It's very, very helpful in this trying time of esports winter. Papa Smithy in the chat. Hello, Papa Smithy. Shorn is here. Shorn, where are you calling from?
Oh, hey, Travis. I'm calling from Connecticut.
Connecticut. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Well, a couple things, but like contrary to the caller who called in before, I actually thought that the LCS, although it might be in a rough spot, like relative to its peak, it's actually in a fine spot if like the goal is longevity of the league. I find that the broadcast is more engaging. I like the more player-focused content. I think NRG actually winning finals was good for the league, even though it wasn't set up. I think we're gonna get less inflated salaries. Imports are probably gonna leave, and like as we've already heard that there's supposed to be new orgs coming into the region. I think like with those things, the league will eventually stabilize. It might not reach its peak, but the actual viewership itself will stop like declining and will probably stabilize and then continue to go on. Kind of like Melee, just like much more successful.
Gotcha. I like this a lot. I like the positivity after we had like a tough call.
It's not like I disagree with those like opinions at all. It's just I think there's a lot more to talk about than just the bad.
I also think there's this really popular movement in the tech sector of futurism and long-term thinking, and that's what you're doing. You're just saying, hey, not the best right now, but let's say we stabilize here, you could run this for a long period of time.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, yeah, pretty much exactly. I mean, like if you told me, hey, we've got an esports broadcast for this game you're playing, it's getting 77,000 average viewers, like to me that would be pretty incredible. And I went to the Jersey finals. I know that it wasn't packed like Madison Square Garden was back in 2015 and whatever. But like there was a ton of people out there, a ton of passionate people, and like everyone there definitely had a good time and was engaged.
Okay, so I led on a lot of that conversation. Mark, do you want to start with this? I don't want to cut you off. Otherwise, I got some stuff.
I was about to get some more water, but I will start and say I do think there is something true to this, as much as I don't want to just sound like I think I engaged pretty faithfully in the last conversation, so hopefully you'll take me at my word here when I say I do think there's some truth to the fact that like you can acknowledge that like it's not going to be unless there's like changes, like maybe the LCS win world, or maybe I don't know, something happens to make the game immensely more popular, because even if you just make the game more popular,
Mr. Beast buys a team. The game, I don't know, League 2.0 comes out, and it's not Overwatch 2 where they headshot it on arrival. Like there's things that could boost the player base that would like maybe help
the esport as a whole, right? Like there's things that might get it back to the peak, air quotes peak, the golden age of like 2013 through 2016 or whatever you want to define it as. Like, but even if you don't get back to the peak, I do think there's a good point to be made that like, hey, it's still a viable, interesting product to watch for the next 5-10 years, because Riot's not going to let the scene die. They've said as much. Like, they're not going to just like pull the plug on it, if you believe them. They said that. So like, even if it stabilizes at 75K and that's your new average, like, yeah, it's not crazy hype like it used to be when it was like seemingly taking over the world, but it's still a good product. And I've seen a lot of newer fans have this sentiment, and I don't want them to get lost in this conversation of doomering from me and Travis, who are just old jaded fucks, because I have seen tweets and the NA area and like other areas where people are just, you know, they still like the scene and they enjoy it, and it's like, what are you going to do? Tell them they're not enjoying it? It's like they are enjoying it.
You're gonna like this. This is dying.
No, you're fucking wrong.
What are you doing?
There were twice as many as you 5 years ago, so that means you hate it now. And it's like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it. What do you mean?
Exactly. Like, you know, I've been watching the LCS since it started too, and like, no, I didn't catch every game, but I caught a good amount of the games, caught a good amount of playoffs. I really loved the broadcast. I don't know. I thought that you guys were doing a pretty good job overall. And I think it's okay to say like, look, we might not be at the, you know, 2015 era where we're getting 500,000 like viewer streams, but like, and someone else was mentioning too, which I agree, like, you know, it's not like they've even like tried advertising the game like for esports very much. Like there's a lot they can definitely do if they just want to like inject viewership. But if you've got like, you know, 75,000 people who are enjoying this product, I think like you're saying, they're doing a pretty good job, and definitely can like grow from there too.
I appreciate that you mentioned the New Jersey thing, because I think that I actually turned to Drew, my producer, while we were at that event, and I was like, you know, it's so funny because I'm like putting out content. It's like not always doing well, especially the interviews with certain players, and you know, the audience is not there at the LCS arena, and viewership looks worse all the time. And then you go to this thing, and yeah, it's not full, but like, especially on Sunday, there were still fucking thousands of people in that arena losing their minds about NRG starting to turn around, and people realizing that NRG might actually win the series. And that's like, you know, in New Jersey, it's not the finals, world championships, it's nothing like that. Those people are coming out to watch two LCS teams play. And so that, I remember telling Drew, I'm like, this does give me hope, right? Like, this thing is not dead as much as people want to pretend that it is. Like, there's so few other esports that could do something like that, especially for a domestic league, and so many few other gaming things. Like, this thing is real. It's just in a rough spot. And the funny thing is like, because I agree with so much of what you say, Shorn, like, the product is in a cool place. I do think NRG winning is a good thing. I do hope that like the lack of revenue, or it's not revenue, but VC funding and free money and all that stuff that was coming into these teams actually does stop the like boomerang thing. I think we'll have one final year of that, which will be this year, where everybody goes to their import players and say, hey, you know, I can't pay you more than like $100,000, and then they're like, fuck that, I'm just gonna go back. I think you'll probably see a lot of attrition this year, but like, I do have a lot of hopes that this stuff will stabilize. The hilarious thing is, if you made a list of reasons to be optimistic for the league and reasons to be pessimistic, the things that are optimistic are almost all entirely just sort of like incidental things that are occurring, you know, like the money leaving and stuff like that. Either the things that are pessimistic or the things that are like leadership level decisions about the league.
Well, that's actually the hopeful part, though,
Yes.
right? It's like you guys just went on a whole like tirade about like all the bad things that like we all agree like are a lot of it is fixable and solvable. So like, you know, if I'm in belief that we can still, like, even if things maintain at that level, that we can still succeed. Imagine if we do turn around like 2 or 3 things. Like there's a lot that can come from it.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that like a couple of things to continue the positive trends. Like, we're at 75K-ish concurrence right now, right? But that's like factoring in, it is fair to say that it was hampered by the weird schedule from the walkout. Like, I think Travis and I are trying to push back on the idea that that is the sole reason, but I think it definitely contributed to lower numbers than you should get. We're talking about all these like sentiment things. To your point, Shorn, if it does get fixed, I don't think there's any reason that the league can't hover around 115-ish thousand concurrents like we saw in 2022. And we saw
Absolutely.
even in spring this year, we were averaged 115,000, so it's like, yeah, why can't we average north of 6-figure concurrents and peaks are around 300,000? That's perfectly fine. And I also think there's truth to the fact that like nothing stays the same at the end of the day. Like things always go up and down in life, whatever it is. And like some of those other, like you mentioned Melee, like the doc that came out for that just like revitalized that scene. Like the most important thing is giving people like narratives to care about at the end of the day, as much as
No, I
Game
don't
of
think that's true,
Thrones.
Mark. I think the biggest thing is to just trade players in and out until you roll D20 and you win one split, and then you trade those players out. Or
You
they
know what?
leave.
You've convinced me.
That's
I'm
a
wrong.
good point. Yeah.
No, let me tell you, Game of Thrones season 8 was right. There's
Yeah.
nothing people love more than a good story, and I think
No,
like
truly though, and it can come. Like, what if like JoJo does like end up like getting a top 8 finish at Worlds like that?
well,
And
I
it doesn't
mean, like,
just have to be JoJo. It could be Palafox. And Palafox is nuts, by the way. But
well, like, and the thing I would love is like not to even need the world's angle, right? Like for Melee, for example, there was this doc that got a lot of people interested, and it transitioned perfectly into the Battle of the Five Gods era. Where it's like these 5 guys won literally every title, and like no one could beat them, and the only people that could beat them were the other guy. Like that was such a sick storyline and like a thing to follow. And like the NBA was doing poorly in the 70s, and like Bird and Magic having this rivalry of East Coast, West Coast, and like all these things like help revitalize that scene. Like you can get revitalizations through cool storylines and things that happen, and I think you need to be well positioned with a league that can pounce on those opportunities when they arrive. And I think hopefully
and that goes back to a lot of the like player focused content that is like being made. Like I think the fact that like we replayed a lot of the drive from contracts, like the like drive contract story into like this weekend, like I was pretty emotional when Contracts won. I've watched his entire career, and it's like I'm invested into seeing how he does now and seeing how the next year goes. Like that matters to me.
It's weird
And
that was your
I think it's
takeaway
super possible.
from finals, because I thought the story was all about Palafox, because they kept replaying my video where people didn't know who Palafox was, and so it was really the story of people learning who Palafox is.
Well, that's the thing is like I've been like a pretty big Palafox fan, so this is like me personally, where it's like
I was just teasing.
no, I know, but like Contracts himself essentially was supposed to have like Blabber's career and didn't, and like we watched that happen as the viewer. We thought we were never going to hear from him again when he went to Academy, and here he is like making Blabber like his bitch. Like I don't know, like to me that was awesome. So like I don't know, like that storyline got me screaming at finals,
Yeah.
And I think like there's a lot more that can happen in the league, especially like we are getting more domestic players. Like I think as you said earlier, like we're all in agreement, like we're probably gonna have a lot more NA players. We don't think the broadcast is gonna give up on this kind of content. Like I think it can really only get better, even if things aren't going as well as they should be. And Mark, do you want me to quick talk about Freak before it gets too long?
I guess you can do it. It's a weird transition.
Wait,
Yeah,
what is
I know.
happening?
I don't really have like a good time for it, but like I just wanted to make a comment about like, and now this is like the only doom and gloom part that I guess we'll talk about at all.
Oh no,
but-
you're supposed to be the positive one.
No, I am, but like I actually think like in a sense, like I think in 2022, like Freak had his best year of casting like ever, and yet again I've also like watched 11 years of him casting, and I do think it was a pretty big hit that the broadcast did lose him, and I've heard like a lot of talk about Dash, and I love Dash, but like I just haven't heard anyone talk about Freak being.
I think it's because they
cast.
think Dash was wronged, and they don't feel that way about Freak because he.
Super fair. I just wanted to point it out. But also Mark getting a lot of creative freedom on broadcast also has been great, and that's pretty much all I've got to say.
Yeah.
The positive spin I was going to lend to that, because it is true that a number of very popular people who have been around in those golden era times left the broadcast, and it, I think upset a lot of fans, both the fact that they weren't there and the way it happened. The positive to that is while the new people brought in are going to need time to prove themselves and win those fans over, it should in theory get better as fans start connecting to these new people, because it's going to be this churn of like, well, I loved
Absolutely.
Dash, or I loved Freak, and who the fuck is this new person, or like I don't like this decision. And then assuming you're hiring good people, eventually people will come around to those new people. So it's like on this idea of like, I don't want to say bottoming out, but like trends being reversed. It's like, yeah, it did suck to lose those people, but also hopefully fans will get attached to the new people.
Absolutely. And like personally, I love Kangas. I got to see him this weekend, which is great. I'm excited to see if like he can get brought over to like I'm invested in just this guy. I think that's cool.
Yeah. No, I think that is super fair. I think there are so many reasons to be optimistic about the LCS, and like that is a controversial statement. There are people out there that I think are just excited to see the league suffer, and sometimes those people show up in our chat like Yanya. But I do think that there are other people who like, I get frustrated about the league and the decisions Riot makes because I'm like, this shit's not dead yet. You know what I mean? Like, you just need to help it a little bit. Stop, like, take your knee off the neck a little bit so that it can breathe. And oh, that's a shitty reference. I'm sorry, but it's just not not my intent. But it's just not a good thing that Riot is doing whenever they make a lot of these decisions and put us in a really rough place where like the league could be so much more than it is, and they just continue to really like struggle. So I don't know. It's frustrating. But I appreciate your call a lot, because like I think
of course, and I wouldn't deny I wouldn't deny it, and obviously like as I said, things aren't going like swimmingly and perfectly, because I'm not like naive and just like ignorant. But I think like people do or have been only really talking about the negative things, and I think it is important, regardless of any topic we're talking about, talk about both sides of it, where it's like there is still a lot of good happening, and we should really highlight those good things, So yeah, honestly, thank you for letting me talk. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, we do need to do that. I'm trying to do more of that. I think if people remember right at the start of playoffs, I did a video that's like, hey, if you haven't been watching LCS in a while, watch this. And it was like, here's all the hype stories that are going into playoffs. And so I'm trying to, again, as we talk about, is Travis killing LCS? Or as I make that video this week, I'm going to talk a little bit about that stuff. So
I can't believe you would do that.
Well, I don't know. There was a Reddit thread where people were also alleging that like I had for a long time wanted all of this to be like, I wanted all these imports to come in, and like I'm now changing only because I'm like losing money or something. People are crazy, but I'm just going to try to talk a little bit about some of that stuff. Anyway,
of course.
Thank you so much, Shorn, and we'll catch you next time.
Hey, have a good one, guys. Yeah, and shout out to my dog. His name's Jax. He's going to the vet tomorrow.
So yes. Sorry for we were kind of wrapping up for a while, but anything else you want to shout out?
Yeah, no. As I said, just my dog. He's going to the vet tomorrow. He's a little hurt, so I hope things go well.
Yeah, hope things go well. Good luck.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Thank you to where are we? Bigger Frog, The Hotness, Alpha, Dark Alley HD, Soybeans, ProStar 21, 504 Caesar gifted 5 subs, and then 504 Caesar sent $10. And then 504 Caesar sent $5, both using the hype chat. So thank you. Yeah, Twitch has this new hype chat, which I guess is just the YouTube super chat, but it's I guess it's nice to see another method of people supporting me. Thank you, everybody who's doing that. It's very nice of you. Okay, Mark is back with our next caller. Caller, what's your name and where are you from?
Hi, my name is Ben, and I'm from Cleveland.
From Cleveland. You've been on the show before, right?
Yeah, I have.
All right. What do you want to talk about on the show?
I just want to talk about, probably brief since we talked about the interview a lot, but I want to talk about how I feel like this interview just made me believe even further that Valorant is Riot Games' #1 priority and that League of Legends has been deprioritized.
So is it mostly the interview or was there anything else? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I think, obviously their actions in the past, but mostly the interview, specifically the they talked about, like the viewership is terrible. They recognized that. That was maybe the only honest thing they said the whole interview was that the, viewership's going down. And when you brought up the fact that, like, okay, maybe move back to the weekends, I think the real reason, in my opinion, they can't move back is because Valorant is there, right? And they wouldn't acknowledge that or, like, bring that up, but I think it's a clear, cause and effect kind of deal that, like, hey, LCS, it got pushed aside for Valorant, and now the viewership is suffering, and we aren't willing to take the steps to make it not suffer any longer.
So I have a question for anybody in the Twitch chat who watched both Val and League, and I know there are some of you. How much of the summer was there overlap? Because from what I understand, even if the schedule had just been normal and it had been those 8 weeks, my understanding was that Val was only using the same arena for a couple of days. And so I keep seeing this repeated a ton. And I know I've become the person that people dog on for, like, actually taking Riot at their word last year about, moving it, not because of Valorant. Continue to think that it was not, whatever. Doesn't matter. But I think if you look at the summer schedule for both of these things, like, there was incredibly minimal overlap. Like, VCT North America was not running out of that studio on most of the days that LCS would have been going. So I don't know if anybody
I
can
could be
speak to
wrong because we got kind of mixed responses. Some people said a lot, some people said not that much. It seemed more consensus was not that much. I think there was at least roughly a month of overlap, which is 4 weeks, which would be like half the season. So, like, not negligible, but also not the entire thing. Whereas in spring, I think there was close to zero overlap. I think there was like maybe one weekend towards the end or something, or maybe it was the beginning. I don't remember. But I think summer there was like more, but wasn't like 100%, or even I don't even think it was 50%, to be honest. Especially when you include playoffs and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I don't know. Next year the schedule's going to change for Valorant, so maybe there will be more overlap. But, like, I don't feel like the schedule was the thing that was there. I will say, Ben, this kind of brings up something that I thought about talking about on the show and then I forgot about, so I appreciate you reminding me. Probably going to do a video about it this week. What, Mark? What's so funny about
Nothing. Look at you.
You got
you're
something
not
you want to
magic.
say?
No, I'm proud of you. You're making videos about League instead of Magic. It's amazing.
A man can have multiple passions, all right?
What were you gonna say? Go ahead. I just chuckled. Once. Yeah, go ahead.
You scoundrel. Okay. So here, let me tell you guys a story about a man named Waylon. So some people might not know about Waylon. Waylon has been at Riot for a very long time, and he ran. He was there basically at the start of the LCS. He's somewhat a controversial figure because he's responsible, I think, for a lot of the like Riot takes on esports, which are often very unconventional compared to esports takes on esports, if that makes sense. So I think for a long, like, format decisions that have been unpopular before, I think oftentimes were stuff that he believed in and championed. But I will say, I remember back in 2012, and I heard that LCS was going to happen, and I went to Waylon. I had lunch with him. I was like, I just don't. Are people going to watch League of Legends twice, like, a week? Like, I just worry. Like, I was really worried about it, and I will give him a lot of credit for, quite frankly, the best years of the LCS. And he eventually left to go do Valorant stuff, but honestly, like, I am not trying to say that I agree with all of Waylon's opinions. In fact, we disagree on many different things, but he was around for, like, the best years of the LCS. I think what is fascinating is what he did after League. So I'm not trying to use Riot sources here. I'm not just, you can look at how this went down. League as an esport, I personally feel, has struggled from a lack of commitment from the games team, where over the years there was even this phrase that people would use, which was like across the street, because the LCS studio and the esports team sat on the other side of Olympic Boulevard from like the main campus. And so both sides would refer to each other as like across the street. And you would often see features that esports would need for a long time that would take so long to hit the game, because like the main game team was just not prioritizing esports features. When Wayland disappeared from League of Legends esports, he went to go sit on the team. I think it was codename Ares, right? Or was it Apollo?
Project A, yeah.
Well, it was
Whatever
Project
it is.
A, but internally I think they called it
Yeah.
Ares, which was the Valorant team. And so this guy who'd been a leader in esports for so long just like disappeared and hung out with the dev team. And what you can see now is a product of that, which is Valorant and the the game and the esport are really closely linked, right? Because he sat alongside Anna Donlan, who, fun fact, I did like a Playmakers episode on when she was running the Skims team at League of Legends, and now she's like the executive producer for Val. I'm not saying it was my interview, but
Travis,
anyway,
let's go. Where are we going with this?
The two of them. Mark, can I finish my story?
I'm asking you to.
The two of them did a lot. And so I go to Val now, and I go to these things, and like this weekend at Media Day, you see them bring out the artist who did the song for the new agent that is born out of Los Angeles. They put under embargo and have now since revealed a new Los Angeles-based map. They created Premiere Mode, which is insane. It is like Clash, but on another level, where basically like all teams are going to qualify into the path to pro is through Premiere. So if you want to get into tier 2, you have to go play Premiere and compete as a team against other people that are doing this. And so they've like merged essentially the path to pro with the in-game experience, so that to really kind of bring back like that 5 folks in a dream type thing. And I think a lot of that was born out of this sort of making sure that the esport and the game are so intrinsically entwined. And so I can agree with the idea that like the feeling that Riot is prioritizing Valorant because you see all this cool stuff, but I think a lot of it was just because they had the foresight to really entwine both the esport and the game on a fundamental level before the game even launched. And as a League person, I am very, very envious of that. Yes, caller?
No, that was Mark, and I. So do you think they're prioritizing Valorant? I couldn't tell if that was the premise of that story.
Never mind. All right, caller, do you have anything you want to shout out?
I didn't even get a chance to talk. You literally filibustered that whole segment.
You had your chance to talk, and you mocked my answer to the question.
You gave it, and I was just asking, like if you were to give a thesis for that, like I was a little lost.
The answer is, I don't know if Riot is prioritizing Valorant. I don't think that they are. I think it looks that way because they have spent so much time. They do such a better job of supporting it from the game side. And so when I go to these media days and I see all the crazy shit that they're doing in Valorant, and I just am envious of it because they don't have it on League side. But I don't think that that's because they're necessarily prioritizing it.
So my follow-up would be to the caller and even to Twitch chat about like this perceived favoritism towards Valorant. And a lot of the messaging, I think, for tinfoil hatters, I'll call you, even though I don't think it's like an outlandish conspiracy, but for the sake of it, we'll call it that. Like the thought is that, okay, LCS was moved for Valorant. It can't go back because of Valorant, and Riot won't really say it. If they did, would that like piss you off more, or like what do you want out of Riot? I guess like is it just that you feel like it's prioritized and you want the league to feel the same way? Do you really think it's prioritized? And if it is, like with hearing it and that kind of stuff, feel better or worse? Like,
yeah, that's a fair point. I guess, in my opinion, I felt for the majority of the interview, not just on this point, but the majority of the interview, it was so disingenuous, and this just kind of stood out to me as another thing. So I just wish they would stop lying about things. That's what I just feel like they consistently lie to us about things. Like even, the Immortals question. So it just adds up.
I got you. It wouldn't make you feel better, but at least you would trust what they're saying at that point.
Yeah. And then they could say like, "Hey, listen. All right, Riot or Valorant's the new stuff. We're pushing it. But here's the stuff that we're doing for League because we still want to support it." Or something like that, rather than like just lie to us and then move on.
Thoughts, Mark?
No, I think it was a question I had. I think it's. I don't know how people are going to feel in response to things, so it's just a heat check.
Yeah. Well, thank you, caller. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, you enjoyed my story. Anything you want to shout out?
We'll just want to shout out Ohio in general. You were really hating on us before the stream started, so putting my bid in for Columbus as the 2024 finals for LCS. It's gonna be great.
I hope I never have to go to Ohio. Anyway, I'll catch you later.
See you later.
All right, we've got 2 more callers to go on the show. Off Mark goes. Let me shout out some subs. We have no subs in the sub queue to shout out. That's okay because LordAudie is here.
Wait. Before we go to LordAudie, what is up with Ohio? Someone asked me if I liked Ohio in Twitch chat earlier as well. I was like, I don't know. I haven't been to Ohio. And then people say Cedar Point is cool. And I don't disagree. Cedar Point is cool, but your whole state isn't Cedar Point. It's like I can't say all of California is Disneyland. It's like that's just not what it is.
So I don't know. So Mark, I don't understand. Do you hate Ohio or not?
I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion.
You had this whole thing, or what's your thesis statement?
That mine was under a minute. I'm gonna go back when this vlog comes out. I'm gonna clock that story. LordAudie's here. LordAudie, where are you calling from?
Queens, New York.
What do you want to talk about on the show?
I wanted to say that DL Steve comments on the conference that they did with the owners about team priority just further confirms about why the many reasons that the LCS is in the current state. Low priority on content, not much fan engagement, roster consistency. I believe that has to be an acknowledgement from the teams about their share of the blame about why the LCS is in the current state. And it just has to do a lot with, not being engaged with the teams. Like outside of the stage time, we don't get much about caring about them. And there's a lot of factors that go into that.
So for those that don't know, you can go back and you can look. I released a press conference to the team owners. The first question was for me. I asked them what they thought about Toast's comments previously about teams rotating players around too often and not making good content, and that's why people not really caring about the teams. Jack and Steve both answered. The Steve answer that is being referenced was basically like, "Hey, look, we are trying to do stuff for the team, or we are trying to consider what is our team as a brand. We are trying to think about that a lot, but also we care about winning, and we're going to bring in the best players and essentially roster consistency be damned." Mark, why don't you take this one?
I find it a little unfortunate. I think what Steve said made some appeal to me on some level as someone who has coached and enjoys the competitive nature of it. To be at the end of the day, what we're chasing is titles and championships. Correct me if I'm wrong, Travis, but they did acknowledge the fact that only one person can win, and so teams need to find other ways. Or did someone else say that, or was it not? I don't remember if it was a team owner or not.
I think it was someone else.
Yeah, I think somebody mentioned it. I don't even know if it was in that answer. But I don't think it was Steve. So
it was the energy owner. Okay, I thought someone said.
Yeah, but the weird thing was the energy owner. Andy did not answer my question, so I guess I think he brought that. He mentioned it in response to a different question or something. Because I think he dodged my question.
He did.
Yeah, it might not have been that one, but either way, they someone at one point said that. So I agree with that sentiment. It's at the end of the day, you're trying to win. It's what will get you the most fans. I think the point about being entertaining, we've made content with NRG players before in CLG back in the day, Travis, and it didn't perform that well. And right after Palafox wins the title, it's his most popular interview ever by like 2 to 3x the size. You know, it's like unfortunate that winning does matter so much. That doesn't mean you can just abandon everything in chasing the winning. And I think to your point, Travis, about like blowing fat stacks and churning through players and chasing winning is a very short-sighted way to do it.
Yeah, and what happens whenever, like, if Palafox did that interview but then fucked off to Europe next year?
Yeah, it does nothing in the long term.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I think Energy is a great case study of a team that like has a lot of through lines narratively that were very easy to tell and made them very easy to cheer for, with players like Contracts and Dokla and Palafox all joining together. You know, FBI kind of being the guy that got them over the hump. Like these kinds of things made it work well. And like the rivalry of him versus Huki that he played in playoffs, and like Huki's way too confident, and like, you know, like these sorts of things exist because Huki and FBI also played a long time together, you know, and like I do think there's points to be made that like if a bunch of randos fucking win the title, no one's going to care. And so you have to have this balance of both. And I think the balance has been way too far on like just churning through players that are not even like properly scouted anyways. Like no offense to a lot of the guys who come from overseas, but like realistically, I don't think the scouting that was done was very good. And it was probably a lot of like name value, and someone watched some VODs and they're like, okay, it was fine, I guess. Sure. So,
I see people in chat saying, yeah, winning is the only thing that matters. If it does, then fucking these teams should pack up shop. Because I don't see a way that they're going to win internationally anytime soon, and only one of the 10 can win every split. So like
they should just price fix. Just
you mean match fix?
No, price.
Just take turns.
We don't pay players over 100,000 because it doesn't matter. You know, like don't get into a bidding war for the best players because you're just screwing yourself. Like you said, if winning's all that matters, like just don't spend that much anyways on content, these kinds of things.
I mean, I just really push back on the idea that winning is the only thing that matters. I think you can, like, if you win and then you rotate all your players out next year, nobody's going to give a shit. Like, okay, so on the Steve thing specifically, I really like Steve. We disagree a lot, and I think on this topic specifically. And I like a lot of the things that Team Liquid has done. Quite frankly, I think that they are, probably because they have a lot of money, I think they do. Like, it is unfortunate that I and others have used them as an example of the like rotating players in and out thing, because I do think outside of that, they do a ton for their fans, including Liquid Plus, and they show up at these things. I mean, I remember before Team Liquid even had a lot of money, Steve would partner with casinos in Vegas to throw like parties at events that were open for fans to come out because he wanted to create cool fan experiences. So let me be clear. I do think Steve really cares about this shit.
And also his team was one of the ones making content on game days with their intros and stuff like that, which is what no other team is really doing other than like a couple. And they half-heartedly try one thing and it looks cringe and they give up. Whereas like they were full send on every day.
The main thing that Steve and I disagree on is, and it's funny because I think we almost set the spectrum that I see from fans as well, which is like Steve said, I mean, I think Steve's mentality is I will burn everything in my org to the ground if I need to, if it means I get to lift a trophy, right? Like nothing else matters. Like all this other stuff is great, but what really fucking matters is winning. I want to win at all costs, blah, blah, blah. And that's the mentality. And so that is why he will rotate out really popular players. That is why he will do all these things all to win. And I think a lot of people really fucking like that and they want that. The problem is he doesn't win. He hasn't won in a long time. And so like that's one of the ironies of him sitting on the panel and being like, no, I got to make all these changes so I can win. And it's like, yeah, but you don't, Steve. Like you're doing this the day after you lost and you got disqualified from making to the finals. And in that, I think that demonstrates my point, right? Which is like, you can't always win. Like, I'm glad you're making these changes. I think it is good. I shouldn't say I'm glad you're making these changes. I think that they rotate their roster too much and they rotate it at the cost of North American talent. And I think later there was another question where he was just like, yeah, the tier 2 scene just doesn't work because people don't get promoted. And it's like, yeah, because you're not fucking promoting them. like that is the deep irony of team owners always saying like, the promotion rates of tier 2 players are are terrible. And it's like, Steve, you had Alfari and Bwipo and now Summit and Impact and there's another player I'm forgetting. Like you rotate these players through your team. It's not like the promotions you are making into your team from outside of tier 2 are doing much for you. So I don't know. I just disagree with him on this, and I really do like Steve. He's been one of my favorite people to work with over the years, but we just disagree on this.
Yeah, and I think like you said, this year is better with like actually promoting the younger talent and like having a cohesive vision for the team rather than just like the 5 biggest brand names you could possibly get, and it made it easier to cheer for them when they were struggling because it's like, ooh, can Harry and Jan figure it out, and like can they actually improve? You know, like there's more to talk about with this team than if it's just 5 big names struggling, and it's like, what a fucking failure of a roster this is, which is kind of like what happened last year. Everyone hated that team last year, despite the fact that they were like, I think, what, 3rd and 4th, both splits, you know, like top half of the league teams actually performing better than this year's. But I think people like this year's roster way more for that reason. And I will also say, while being the team that will burn the world to the ground to try and win a world championship, that is actually a narrative as well. Like that one team being that way is cool. You don't want your whole league that way, but I think if Steve wants to be the guy who is willing to throw money at the wall and like go hamburgers, that's fine. Like, but it's more problematic when everyone approaches everything the exact same way and there's no diversity and like there's no other personality or like there's no other profiles of what the team is for fans to latch onto. Because like you said, some fans do like this like balls to the wall management style, and it appeals to some people, and that's fine. And they can attach to Team Liquid. What about the rest of the league? You know, like who want a team like NRG where they don't change over and you become fans of like the hard work and hoping it pays off angle, which Steve's team will never have with the philosophy that he has.
So Grandizel in the chat said, Travis with another brain dead take. Grandizel, discord.gg/Travis, join a channel, let us know what your Discord name is. I will pull you in and you can explain how I have yet another brain dead take. That is my invitation to you. Anyway, LordAudie.
Yeah.
What do you got for us? Any follow up on any of this?
I was gonna say that one of the interesting things about when Steve started answering that question is that he noted that how this stack is against, like esports in league. For example, we don't have regional pride in a sense that we don't have, like team based on states and things like that. He mentioned that the league hasn't going like long enough for it to have like legacy fandom from, parents to sons and siblings and all that. And then to add on top of that, it's like, well, we have all this against us, yet we are not making any effort to just like look for avenues outside of winning to just gain fandom. And it's like, well, you're saying that we don't have this, and now we're just basically using the most difficult or the most low percentage way to gain fandom, and that is where we are putting our eggs in the basket. So that was very interesting. Is saying, I don't have a leg, I don't have an arm, but yet I am just going to just find my way to just get that 1% instead of just looking for other avenues to just basically get fan engagement. And it's not just, that team, it's just many teams that have abandoned a lot of their fan engagement content throughout these past seasons that it just, I don't know, like, why should I care about these players if the only way that I see them is on stage? I mean, there has to be more than that.
Yeah. I think, it was just very funny because I had just released that video and I don't know if Steve watched it. I don't think he did, but it was funny how much his response felt like a response to the video, and he referenced a lot of stuff I talked about in there. So like, I don't know, we should try to talk to him.
Small random thing too. I think it was in response to this video that this press conference when people were talking about players who made it in like academy and like the turnover rate pre and before academy versus like the tier 2 thing. And I'm going to spit these numbers out because I'm not making content on this. From 2015 to 2018, so pre-franchising for 3 years, there were 62 players who came into the league and like debuted as like rookies, or at least like
from tier NA tier 2, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So names like Billy Boss and RF Legendary and Brandini and Ray and Honori, like whatever, just lots of random names. From 2019 to 2021, another 3-year window, it was 25.
That's actually really interesting statistics.
Yeah, so it's like less than half as many made it. So when people say, oh, well, the tier 2 system wasn't promoting players, I think, again, to Travis's point, you're asking, well, why wasn't it promoting players?
Yeah.
Was it because
I wonder
the
if it had
scene was
anything to do with money and franchising and suddenly deciding to go get other people.
and contract jails and all the problems that came from Academy.
Yeah. Grandizel did say something about how TL promoted players, but ignored my invitation. So I guess they will not be joining, which is too bad because I would have loved to have heard about how I had another brain dead take. LordAudie, anything you want to shout out before we go on to our last caller?
Just shout out to my wife that is sleeping right now. Fell asleep on the show. I guess it was the Travis monologue.
Okay,
And to,
that's all right.
and then to Alienware, I love my QD OLED. It's fantastic. I play on it every day, 3 times.
I'm glad you enjoy it. I played on it this past weekend, so I'm glad you're enjoying it as well. I will take that as your apology for flaming me. All right, I'll catch you later. All right, off to the callers. Sometimes have a bit of a tongue on them. You know what I mean?
I like the personality.
Yeah. Mark goes off to grab our last caller. We got Dark Tarkanis. Thank you for the sub. Really appreciate it. If you are watching right now and you have you're watching live, you can move your cursor over the purple crown, which pops up whenever you put your cursor over the screen. It'll tell you if you have a Prime sub, and if you do, it's very generous and very much appreciated when you send those this way. Looking for Grandizel? Nothing, Grandizel. This is a college show. You want to call me brain dead? Do it to my fucking face, or rather, do it to my fucking ear over audio, whatever. You get the gist. George Zulu, thank you for 40 months. We did it. 40 months. Thank you. All right. Mark is grabbing this last caller. If they're still here, he seems to be having issues. Hippo Squirrel gifted to Raz. Thank you, Hippo Squirrel. I'm sure Raz will appreciate that. We tried to get Raz on the show, but he was unavailable, and yet he's here in the chat. So, but he's gassing me up for my interview. So clearly he can stay. I'll allow it. Where's Mark is figuring out something is going with this caller. It's taking a while. By the way, after the show, please stick around, everybody. Please stick around. I'm begging you to stick around. I'm on my knees, groveling for you to stick around because I've got 2 fun little sponsorships that we're going to do. And you being here is actually very supportive. Hello.
I apologize for taking a long time. I accidentally pulled 2 people with basically the same topic. I didn't realize I did that.
Uh-oh.
So we're going to try and just hot swap to a new one here. Hope it goes well.
Pop, welcome to the call. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Orange County, California.
Orange County, California.
Yes.
I have mixed feelings on Orange County, but not as bad as Ohio. What do you want? What did Mark tell you to talk about?
So originally I wanted to talk about the TL Steve statements, but I guess we can kind of hone in on one specific part of that press conference. Steve made a lot of good points, and I also respect Steve a lot, but some of the things he said regarding social media kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. Basically, there was one part of his explanation for, I guess, the lack of content or the lack of focus and investment in content was just that he didn't want to rely on some of the like clickbaity nature and the kind of validation seeking aspects of, I guess, YouTube particularly, which seems like a serious oversight from a perspective of a franchise team owner, because ultimately this whole league is made up of 10 business owners who are trying to make money. And for someone who is a large part of the conversation of team owners who complain a lot about the lack of monetization in the LOL esports, it seems weird that you wouldn't utilize something that is pretty tried and true. I'm sure you also know this, Travis, from how YouTube works. The way you attract viewers and potentially keep viewers is by doing what Toast does. Like you kind of have to lean into it, and the people who are grossed out by that will, they don't have to watch your content. They can just go to the nerdier side of League or the actual esports side of it. But that specific part of the statement just made it seem like, one, Steve seems a little bit disconnected from the reality of viewer-based growth at this point, and also that it appears that he has kind of a heavy hand in the social media side of Liquid as well.
Yeah, I feel like that was just Steve kind of going off. Like, this is a thing that I've noticed in a lot of press conferences with leaders, where sometimes, like, they'll just get distracted. They're like a puppy, and they just like charge off in the distance. And I feel like that's what happened, because like, even like look at the Team Liquid LOL channel. There's a video from 2 months ago, go karting for $100, but we crash instead. And it's Core JJ with his hands on his head saying bronze level driving. Like, I actually think that, TL does make this YouTube content. They do clickbait. I mean, some of their stuff could be a little clickbaited better, but they have like a video called "The Only Time NA Succeeded," or I don't know, just like a lot of stuff that maybe it's not like super heavy clickbait, but I mean, there's a thumbnail that I'm looking at right here that has a censored Ovly and Raz on it called World Baby. Like, Team Liquid clickbaits all the time. I don't think that I think that's just Steve sort of using buzzwords or something to fill an answer.
Well, yeah, I think he's probably trying to say more that like Team Liquid's brand shouldn't just be that.
I guess like he's trying to contrast to like FaZe or something.
Yeah, FaZe, where there's a bunch of like influencers being dipshits a little bit. Like he doesn't want that for his company. They have like the Marvel attachment, the Disney attachment, Naruto branding stuff. Like I think that he is trying to differentiate in the space, but obviously he still has to make content in the space. So, like I understand what he's trying to say, and I hope it didn't come across like he was saying like people who do that stuff are fucking stupid or like that's gross content. But like he's just got a different angle, which I think is fine. But I will say, I think Toast and like actual content creators do a much better job, and it's kind of funny that they can do so much better.
I also will know that this did not go over well with the audience, because I saw some of the comments and stuff. But like, I actually do like that Steve can answer the question of like, who's a Team Liquid fan, or who should root for Team Liquid, right? And he used it kind of in a weird way where he's like, oh yeah, they're like quirky nerds or whatever. I think, his answer was, they are the anime fans. They are the people who like Magic the Gathering. They are people who they aren't like the jocks or the bros, right? It's in strong contrast to a team like 100 Thieves. And so I do think that, even if I think there's a lot that Team Liquid could do better, that I appreciate that he's able to think about like, who is a fan of Team Liquid, or who does this brand stand for? Because I think a lot of teams can't answer that question, quite frankly. So, yeah. Either way, thank you so much, Pop Pop. Sorry that Mark cucked you. Anyway, what is your anything you want to shout out?
Well, it's all good, Mark. You don't need to throw him under the bus. Goddamn. Shout out to NRG. Super cool season. Super cool year from them as a whole. Shout out to Croissant. I went to high school with that dude, so it's pretty cool to see him succeed. So, and thanks for the show, guys.
That is cool. Thanks for calling in. We really appreciate it.
Take care.
Yeah, Travis, how dare you throw your co-host under the bus? I would never.
Yeah, Mark would never. Dude, Mark just sits around on the show. The only thing he does is he just waits for a bus. He just waits for the bus to be driving down the street so that he could be like, now here's the reason I do this show. And he just shoves me as hard as he can.
But Travis, you're so easy to do it to, because you're like on your hands and knees in the street already. It's like you're just begging to get thrown under a bus.
What do you want to plug? What do you want to shout out, Mark?
Shout out Blue Beetle. I forgot to say that's what I watched in theaters last week. It was fine.
You watched that? Oh my god! Was it empty?
No, actually, there ended up being a lot more people than I thought there were going to be.
That's wild.
I liked it. I think
you're really putting that AMC stubs to work, and I appreciate it.
I am. So what's funny is we actually booked a ticket to go see it on like Monday or whatever, and then Ashley felt sick, so we didn't go, and then we went to see it again on Thursday. So technically, according to AMC, I saw Blue Beetle twice. It was fine. I think it's unfortunate that like it doesn't do anything interesting for a lot of people, probably because it's just another superhero movie. But if you have Hispanic family or significant others, or you are Hispanic, like you will probably connect with this movie a lot more. And I think it does provide something new, but like not universally. Probably.
I do appreciate that. I just wish it was given like I don't know, the DC stuff. I've lost.
Yeah, I mean, like I won't tell you it's a great movie, but I will say like it was cool to see that matter to someone like a lot of people in the theater.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right. For me, we have a surprise test coming out, and then I'm going to try to do some content this week. We'll see. I'm trying to fill the empty void, which is September, in the North American League of Legends calendar. So hopefully I've got some stuff for you guys. We can make it work out. But everyone stick around. I'm going to be streaming for a little bit, and please stick around. I need you to stick around. Anyway, that's it. Mark, goodbye.
Goodbye.